through Thursday and get points for gas. Plus, get 3 times points every Sunday. Mondays play Bull Rider kiosks for food and river credits. Tuesdays get floor-wide pinball payouts all day. Wednesdays come in for Club 55. And Fridays take advantage of BOGO Buffet. Check LICR.com for promo details.
Little River, more fun than ever.
It's the News Talk 1090 WKBZ, the talk of Muskegon, authentically speaking with Marni, and we're back. Fast commercial break.
It was. I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, too much time in between. Doesn't matter how exciting the talk is. I'm on to another thing. I have so many thoughts in regard to this. So we've been talking about fear, and we've been talking about daydreaming and the emotions and how that's an internal guidance system. There's a whole bunch in there that, if anybody's just tuning in, they've sounds like a lot of different things. But understanding how to use those all together to be able to create your new goals or your what you want out of life. So
I think I always feel like I'm a good guinea pig because I'm at a very beginning part, I think, of my own personal development in terms of where I want to go now. And I've always said to you, I'm so excited because even at my age, I feel like I have literally a whole nother life now. And I live with, and I work with people who have that too, living into their 90s and 100s. And so it's a great reality, in effect. And I find myself struggle with, we talked about, and which I really appreciated from someone who feels sort of like a neophyte, that differentiation between if you feel the fear but there's no excitement, that's a really good red flag. But then feeling the fear of, ugh, and having the excitement and a little bit of that adrenaline rush, which I need to trust in, and kind of leads you along, that path. And I go back and forth because I know some people are like, oh, there's no way at this point I'm going to be changing my life, or these things are so unrealistic. I don't think we're talking about sweeping changes. I mean, people may want those, but the fact is that, individuals are looking at first, second, third careers, first, second, third families. I mean, people, regardless, are going through that change and needing to reinvent themselves because of longevity. And that, you and I have talked about, the passion is ageless. Pursuing your passions is an ageless function, but it's happening anyways. And so I'd like to be able to be on the side of embracing that and being able to help define that, because no one else is going to do that, versus the frustration that comes from feeling the fear, but feeling the excitement and sublimating it and never doing anything about it. Because I think that can result in some really dark frustration that kind of begins to snowball.
I think I see a lot of, I've seen people do that. I've been there. I've been there where I just slip back and say, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this, and I can't. Where am I going to find the resources for that? Or, or people in your life at that time aren't always encouraging of those plans either. And so, because it's not in line with what they think, or maybe it threatens their stability a little bit. I'm losing my train of thought on that one. I'm getting excited about this.
Yeah. No, it's just the feeling of frustration that can come from sublimating that even versus not even allowing yourself.
Well, when I've tried to not go with it, and I think, oh, I can just go ahead and live with this. This is good. Why do I need to change anything? Find myself I find this with a lot of people. This is where depression starts to really set in. People get so depressed. Yeah. And people love to use too the terms of midlife crisis or whatever the excuse may be, because they're experiencing these feelings and these desires and these things, wanting to change, and then they become depressed because they, things don't. I've been there. Yeah, I've been there, but that's a scary place to me, to be in a place where I'm not creating something that I want.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're right about the depression. The longer effects of not being able to allow yourself to do things like that. And, and I really want to reiterate, for those people that may be listening that are really evolved and allowing themselves to listen to the voice and the personal development, and those that are just kind of going, well, maybe, it really is baby steps. It has been for me. I'm just pulling on my own experience. It's not these sweeping things. I have to say, just as an example, I'm particularly proud of my niece. It just occurred to me as I was saying this, because she has done exceptionally well in her college career and honors and scholarship and the whole 9 yards, and made a change almost into her 4th year. And she switched her majors, and it was something that she's very creative in. She doesn't have a lot of tactical training, but clearly she's talented. And it's a complete shift from a more academic type of major that didn't have that element of creativity. And I think whether she acknowledged it or said it to me or not, that had to have a lot of fear attached to it, kind of a what am I doing? But I have to say, for someone at that age to go, nope, gonna switch, because quite frankly, I think I know more individuals now, and even when I was in college, that would have just completed those 4 years and just kept on track, because the parents are saying, what? And the friends are going, what do you mean you're switching? And to walk through that change at this age, I think is a huge opportunity. And I would love to see that more across the board. You know, I think she's a great example at a very young age of just going, well, no, and making that shift. And the world didn't fall apart, and I'm sure she had fears, but they are not coming to fruition. And I think that, to me, is an actual example I always want to keep in my head of it's okay. And you're going to get a lot of reinforcement that it's not.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
And
For the other fears.
You might. I don't... from my experience, I did experience some resistance from other people sometimes when I made changes. Especially, in my previous marriage, and that was just fear. That's fear on that other person's part, not understanding how this is going to impact them, and really, really a lot of resistance to, really, Marni, you're daydreaming. How can you do this? And how are we going to do this? Are you thinking of me? And it's fear-based. It's always fear-based. Really, what's the reality of that? And I had to learn that, and step out there and do it anyway, and take the risk eventually, because I don't sit well in my so-called comfort zone for too long. It doesn't feel right to me. And so growth is what I've been about, and expansion, and learning something new. I'm a lifelong learner. I think that's important. I think that keeps our brains active. Our, our whole physical being is so good for us to continue to learn and to remain open to all possibilities. From that, you talk about baby steps. I feel like I've just been, at my age of being 42 years young, I've went through many changes or many baby steps, and I just feel like it's a progression into each next thing, so it's not like it's been a huge drastic thing, because if this other event in my life hadn't occurred, I wouldn't be in this place. Exactly. Right. So I had to learn something in order to get to this point. So it's just been a long transition is what I'm feeling like, and it's still continuing. That's very exciting. It's still scary, because as you do it, you become more confident in those little baby steps that you've already made. So the next step is going to be even bigger, I found, because you don't want to sidestep. Sidestepping isn't growth. It's just being in the same place. It's still a comfort zone. So I step a little bit further. Sometimes I step back again. Oh, I got my feet wet. That was kind of scary. Then I do it again. And each time I experience fear, because it's new. It's something I don't know a great deal about, but I'm learning and I'm growing. And kudos to your niece for changing a direction and knowing to do that and following her intuition and her internal guidance system on this just wasn't the right place for me. I'm not happy. I want to be happy, so therefore I need to do what I need to do. I can say from my personal experience, when I went back to school, I have the 1 degree working as a speech therapist. I went back to finish that full degree, and it was dragging for me. It's an exciting career as I'm doing it, but I did, the learning process of it just I wasn't feeling it anymore. Right. So I knew something was missing. So I changed my degree without, I started changing my course of action without announcing this to everybody. Right. And it was so funny as I was looking at communication, and media. If I'm looking that direction, of course, that was very scary, because it's completely off track from where I've been. And even that, I went back and I found, my absolute passion in psychology and behavior, and which is so in line with the personal development stuff.
Yep.
It is an absolute passion of mine. But look where I'm sitting right now. Found myself still right back sitting here doing a radio show, looking into some work with film and television.
Yeah.
Still, my personal development brings me right back to that place because my internal guidance system is already pre-programmed for something that I have a passion for.
Yeah,
I
that's
think it's an important
point.
To make, but it just led me right back there. So now I get to incorporate all of that together and be able to fulfill all those passions. But each one of those led to the next one.
No, you're right. Yeah, that's a very good point, that it was very full circle and brought you back. And I wanted to go back to something you just said, too, about, we've all had very dark areas in our lives. There's no question about that. I think the fact that all that experience is necessary to, I think, develop an element of self-confidence of this too shall pass. And it might be difficult, it might be painful, or it may be a wonderful transition. But you really hit something that struck me, which is all of the things we experience, everything ultimately lends itself, hopefully, to our own self-knowledge and to be able to rely on that intuition, which is, oh no, I'm not going to pay any attention to that. You really, those life experiences, those lifelong learning lessons, really, I think, what should enable you to feel good about your intuition and believe in it. And lend itself to that kind of quiet self-confidence, where everyone might be kind of going, what? But you're like, this is right. I saw this. I learned from this. And this is what I can bring to it now.
And that's how it's supposed to be. That's what we're supposed to be taking from those experiences, not reliving them.
Great point. You're right.
Not going back to them. And I've done this before. I'm sure everybody has experienced something in their life that's like this. But I remember, transitioning from one relationship, starting a new one, and finding myself seeing and experiencing some red flags, so to speak, and going back to my head and talking myself out of what I was feeling, away from my intuition and these red flags that I'm seeing in my mind's eye. I'm talking myself out of them, saying, going back to the same thoughts from the previous relationship. Well, this must be me if this is happening again. I'm doing something. Well, heck yeah, I was doing something. I wasn't paying attention to how I found myself there in the first place. That's the part that needed to be changed. I'm not responsible for that person's behavior.
Right.
That's not, that wasn't it. And that's what I was accepting. So I was going back to that sidestepping again. We're meant to learn from the first one, not take the blame for everything. We have to be responsible and accountable, but not taking blame for somebody else's actions. But we're supposed to be learning to do that. What I was supposed to be doing when I saw red flags in my mind's eye was say, I can't, I've been there. This is what's not right. And I need to grow from there. And I need to look for something different.
Yeah, there's that quote that we all, I'm sure, have all heard, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. Well, we can mix up those words a little bit, and absolutely, we absolutely do. And some of us are harder learners. I mean, I'll be the first one to say that. I might need to go through something, 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But the point is whether I go through it 2 times or 10 times, hopefully, I will begin to acknowledge the red flags, but then act on them. And that comes, I think, from trusting your intuition and the experience that you're bringing to it, which only you have. Other people can contribute, I think, and help, but it's only what you have, and having that confidence to take it from there.
Well, and that's in every area. So I used relationships as an example, but in every area. So if it's career or making a big change in your life, whatever it may be, those are the same principles that hold true. But to pay attention to that, to pay attention to red flags or your emotional state at that time as you're entering each thing. If you're not feeling it, ask yourself why. Sometimes, just like we talked about, how do you know that difference? Sometimes I've gotten there and I'm like, I talk myself right into it just because I'm nervous. But there wasn't any emotional excitement to go along with it. There wasn't any rise in my energy or my passion. It became almost a drain. Well, that doesn't